Let's take the LA fires I'm talking about. We are not ready to fight wildfire in this country. Our system is fundamentally broken, and we have a big one coming, and we're not ready. So time is of the essence in fire response. You know what the response time is nationally for wildland fires? That's because there isn't one. Worst disaster in American history burning as we speak, and it's January. So there is no fire season.
What were your initial thoughts when you saw the fire?
Knew right away it was going to be a catastrophe. And actually, as recently about 4 weeks ago, I wrote an op-ed before all this.
Are you serious?
We wrote an op-ed, appeared on foxnews.com saying, we are not ready to fight wildfire in this country. Our system is fundamentally broken, and we have a big one coming, and we're not ready. I wrote a book about it 2 years ago called Mudslingers, about aerial firefighting. And 100% of the proceeds of that book go to fallen and injured wildland firefighters. I don't make a cent off it. But in the book, I wrote about it too. I said, I've been fighting fires for almost a decade now. I'm not an expert. This guy's been doing it for 30, 40, 50 years. But I'm telling you, how we fight wars in other countries is such a far cry from how we protect our people, our own people. And when I see, I'm not criticizing the brave firefighters on the ground. Let's talk about our firefighters. You know, a structure firefighter in whatever city you're in. You dial 911 by national code, National Fire Protection Association, NFPA 409-1710, they have a whole list of codes. There'll be a big red fire truck at your front door in about 5 minutes, 20 seconds. Every city in the country is laid out that way. And we pay those firefighters year-round, fantastic salaries, great wages, because they do a dangerous and important job for our communities. We may not need them every day, but when we need them, we need them. And we fucking need them right away. We do the same thing with our police officers, same thing with our military. Right now, our firefighters have been staring down the barrel of a 40% pay cut, our wildland firefighters. We pay our wildland firefighters like hourly seasonal employees. We treat them like ski resort employees.
40% pay cut? Since when did that happen?
It hasn't happened yet, but that's what they are. If we don't enact legislation to protect their pay, that's what they're looking at having. And every year, that's what our firefighting community that protects our wildland firefighting, our wildland firefighter community is constantly worried, are we going to get paid next year? Because they are paid as hourly seasonal employees. You know, and you look at the disparity between how we treat a veteran that goes to war. They get paid a salary. It's not the best salary in the world, but it's a salary to live on. They get housing benefits, they get medical benefits. And if they get hurt, injured, or killed, either in the States or on deployment, basically the military and the VA take care of them. Basically, it's not, we all know the VA is not perfect, but there's a system in place. Our wildland firefighters get none of that. In fact, my team and I started a foundation, raised hundreds of thousands of dollars specifically for that, the Montana Firefighter Fund, specifically to help severely injured or killed firefighters and their families, because there is no SGLI, there's no VA, there's no Wounded Warrior Project. And when these guys get hurt or, God forbid, killed, their families are kind of left like, what's the big deal? Like, what are we supposed to do? Where's the help? So it's incredibly sad. But if you look at how we treat the problem holistically, this is such a challenging problem to solve. It's actually very simple to solve, but it's very challenging because it's a whole of government issue. Let's take the LA fires I'm talking about. For years, California has led the nation in environmental reform. There's some good things about that. We all want clean air. We all want healthy forests. We all want healthy ecosystems, and we want as many species running around as possible. I know very few people, actually, I don't think I know anybody who doesn't want those things. But those policies come at a cost. And this is, again, going back to America First, policies have impacts. And if you're going to say that the smelt or the Eurasian snailfish or, the spotted owl is more important than the safety of millions of residents, that's a decision you have to make openly and clearly. And you have to be honest with your constituents. Hey, everybody, I know you all want spotted owls flying around. Are you comfortable with your neighborhood burning to the ground to protect that owl? And people would say, no, absolutely not. Are you crazy? So how our structure firefighting community is built, it emanates from the great fires of the 19th century. So, go through history, and especially in America, we built our cities fast during national expansion. We built them out of wood. And they built them without any rules. People just threw up whatever they could. Denver, Kansas City, Chicago, Boston, these great fires. The Great Chicago Fire really was the impetus. I think it was 1893. I might be wrong on a year or two there, but late 19th century. And after that fire, everyone came together and said, never again. We're done with our cities burning to the ground. This is happening too often. And actually, who came out and fixed it was private industry. Westinghouse, General Electric, the electric companies who were wiring our cities with early electricity. There was no code of how to run wires. Now you can't put an outlet in without pulling out the code book and a guy coming by inspecting it. Back then, it was so new, you just, whatever, stick the wires in here and let's go. So all these wood buildings jammed together with a bunch of wires running through them that were shorting out all the time, and these cities would start on fire and they'd literally burn to the ground. So in the wake of the Great Chicago Fire, the electrical companies came together and formed an association that today is known as the National Fire Protection Association. And they said very clearly, number one, this is morally wrong. It's also bad for business. Like, we're burning down cities. We are going to create a system of codes to better protect our cities from wildfire. And fast forward to the 20th century, what that did was building codes, fire sprinklers, how we wire our rooms to make sure that, the outlets in our wirings, 16, 18 inches off the ground, depending on what state you're in, how we run the wires through conduit, where fire hydrants are. Those early fires, what would happen is, it was before water in the cities, so they'd fight them with pails of sand, and shovel on the fire. And a lot of times they'd create fire breaks in the city. So as buildings were burning, instead of spraying water on them because they didn't have fire hydrants, they would just demolish a line of buildings behind them. That's where the saying "fight fire with fire" comes from. And then start them on fire to create a backburn. To literally, they'd burn down part of the city to keep the rest of the city from burning when the main fire got there, which is a tactic to fight wildfire. And eventually they said that this is ridiculous. We should be able to fight fires in our city. So they created a system to fight fires. And that starts with building codes. It starts with a fire hydrant on every street corner. It starts with hoses that match the fire hydrants. Because then as we started to use water in cities to fight fire, different boroughs would help each other out. Brooklyn would go help Manhattan, or, Long Beach would go help, Anaheim, whatever. And they'd get there and the hoses wouldn't match because they bought different equipment, or they made their own thing up. And then you'd have a fire wagon show up and try to plug their hose in. Ah, shit, these are different sizes. Like, what good is it if we can't hook the hoses up? So they standardized hose sizes, respirators, how to train firefighters. And it created a national standard for firefighting that, as it was adopted, decreased structural firefighting deaths in civilians and firefighters by 80%. And as you well know today, firefighters, we call them firefighters, but really, I think 94% of call-outs for firefighters now are medical related. They're basically EMTs and car accidents.
Yeah.
We've largely eliminated structure fire from our nation's regular everyday occurrence. And around every city, fire stations are located to provide a 5-minute response time anywhere in the city. And within that response time is a table of requirements. Okay, it's a 4-story building, it'll be a ladder truck. It's a 10-story building this big, all right, we need 2 ladder trucks, 4 rescue rigs, 2 ambulances, and they basically construct that based on a response matrix. And a 5-minute response time means you call 911 because you have a kitchen fire. They get there while the fire's still in the kitchen. They show up half hour later or an hour later, now the fire's in the living room, or the whole house is burned down, or it's moved to the next house. So time is of the essence in fire response, any kind of fire. You know what the response time is nationally for wildland fires?
I don't. I'm afraid
That's because there isn't one.
Oh, perfect.
There is no requirement. None. That's why, like last year for the Texas fires, it took 3 to 4 days for aircraft to be able to be ordered through the system. And I'll tell you why. I'm not blaming anybody. It's not the Forest Service's fault. It's not the Department of Interior's fault. This is just how the system we've allowed to exist works. When the fire season's over, it's January, and we have the biggest fire, worst disaster in American history burning as we speak, and it's January. So there is no fire season. November, we were burning in New Jersey. All summer, of course, is Colorado, Utah, Montana, the West. February last year, we're burning in Texas. Now it's January, we're burning in LA. So there is no season anymore, if there ever was one. But when these traditional federal system says the fire season is over, They deactivate all the air tankers and all the firefighters, all the engines. They lay off the fire crews and they shut down the fire stations. It's literally like if this here in this neighborhood, you said, you know, we haven't had a fire here in about a week. We feel pretty good. Hey, mayor, fire all the firefighters, sell the fire engines for cash, and shut down the fire stations because we obviously don't need them anymore. We haven't had a fire in a week. So why do we need all these people hanging around? That is the exact paradigm that governs our wildland fire apparatus nationally. And that's why in January, there was not a ready-made response matrix ready to go for this, because come wintertime, we send everybody home.
No matter where you're watching Shawn Ryan Show from, if you get anything out of this, please like, comment, subscribe, and most importantly, share this everywhere you possibly can. And if you're feeling extra generous, please leave us a review on Apple and Spotify podcasts.